Now let's get to work, because this subject is monumental, but the time is not monumental. I'm talking about the world war against African history since 1968. I take the year 1968 because this was the year scholars within the African Studies Association led the elite black scholars out of that association to form the African Heritage Studies Association. The main challenge to this white-dominated organization is that the white scholars were researching Africa and turning over information to the government so that the government will know how to control Africa. They had colonialized the subject of Africa, going back to something which I have repeatedly called attention to. The fact that in the 14th and the 15th century, Europeans not only colonized history, they colonized information about history. And then they began to colonize image. And the most disastrous of all of their colonization was the colonization of the image of God. And when you control the image of God, you control the mind of people. The controllers tell you that God could not possibly look like you, and by downgrading your civilization and by letting you know that you have to reach God through them and on their terms, they are letting you know that you are outside of the grace of God and cannot address Him directly without their permission. And when you are in this kind of state, you are in a state of permanent questioning of your world position. This conquest of our mind was more disastrous than the conquest of our body, more disastrous than slavery, and slavery was one of the great disasters in history. Because we have not mastered the politics of history, the politics of the management of time and place and intentions of other people, we become the victims of our lack of information, and many times great disasters are forced upon us that we could have stopped had we known the history of the invader. Had the Africans in North Africa and the people in Western Asia known the history of the intent of the Romans and the Greeks, they could have saved themselves from almost 1,000 years of the Roman-Grecian occupation and interference in North Africa. They could have stopped the destruction of the city of Carthage, and they could have managed early Christianity on African terms, because Africans created it, and when foreigners took it over and formalized it and dogmatized it around a character called Jesus Christ, you assume that they were creating something for the first time, and it was something you had all along without the dogma and without the formalization. Once you understand your own history and your own contributions in relationship to other people, you don't buy second and third hand religions and politics handed to you by a bunch of fools. Now, if you understand St. Augustine and read the book Shadow of the 3rd Century, by Alvin Boyd Kuhn, or John Jackson's Christianity Before Christ, or another book by John Jackson, Pagan Origins of the Christ Myth, you will find that the Christ story predates Christ by over 2,000 years. You find a European concept of the Christ story coming out of the conference at Nicaea, 325 A.D., and you buy a white Christ and a white set of deities, because it was at the conference at Nicaea that the religion became Europeanized, and it became a political instrument in the handmaiden of European world dominance. Now, if you understood this, you could turn back the European concept of Christianity. I don't want your garbage. I've got a better version of my own. And if you read a book called The Arab Conquest of Egypt, 1903, you would understand that the imperial intent of the Arabs was not one mite different from the imperial intent of the Europeans, and you would also understand that every element that went into the making of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism was already in Africa before the first European wore a shoe or lived in a house that had a window. And because you do not know this, you join some desert conquerors thinking he would get the Romans off of your back, and you were right. He did get the Romans off your back, but he replaced the Romans on your back, and he's still on your back. Right before your eyes in your own time, you've seen the parent nation of Egypt, the nation whose population and whose ideas gave birth to Egypt, Ethiopia, destroyed, mainly by Arab-financed so-called freedom fighters from Eritrea, a postage stamp country that could fit into Ethiopia, and Ethiopia wouldn't miss the space. How could this small nation, allegedly fighting for independence from Ethiopia, then if they're fighting for independence from Ethiopia, once Ethiopia is out of Eritrea, then stop? Why did they have to go into Addis Ababa? And why then did these Muslims, moving into Ethiopia, take some of the best and most prettiest of the Ethiopian girls and turn them over to the Muslims coming down from the north? You won't deal with the lack of respect that is shown to you and your woman. You won't deal with the fact that every major organized religion on the face of this earth is really a political party, and it functions as a political party. And all of them works against spirituality that must survive just like the wind must survive. You think I'm talking away from the subject? I'm talking on the subject. Until you understand the politics of history and understand that the politics of religion and the politics of history, the politics of culture, all one and the same. You're not going to save yourself, and you're not going to be free of any domination until you take your damn nose out of the air and think that because you belong to something, you're better than your brother. A Founders Day meeting was held in Ghana. The visitors did not associate with the Ghanaian population, did not understand the historical significance of Ghana, did not read the intellectual father of Ghanaian politics in the 20th century, Casely Hayford. It's the truth about the West African land question, Ethiopia Unbound. Did not understand that in Ghana, above all other African nations, a literature of liberation was created 2 generations ahead of independence. Is this literature of liberation that gave Ghana an advantage over other nations. Now you're among the jewel, the political jewel of African nations. You are there, have not read one piece of its literature. You're disassociating yourself because they are not from the population, because they are not Muslims. And you're acting like you got to turn to the foot of Islam to protect yourself from another Africa. Why in the hell are you there? If any religion makes us strangers to our brothers and sisters, that religion should have been thrown into the garbage can before you took it off. Every religion supposed to be an instrument of your liberation are supposed to be discarded. No religion is supposed to divide you from your brother and your sister. No religion is supposed to give you the illusion that there's something in your choice that makes you better than your mother, your brother, and your cousin. Nobody is oppressing you because of your religion. Nobody is rejecting you because of your religion. A bigoted white cab driver can sell all of this for you. He don't give a damn if you're a Christian or Muslim or a black Hebrew Israelite. When he sees you, he passes you up. He's crude. He's a better Pan-Africanist than most of you. He don't want none of you in his cab. And you can praise Allah or Jesus Christ, Allah the Mawli, anybody you praise, all the gods you call on. You can get to Kennedy after 11 o'clock at night and you can't get a cab. No matter what religion you belong to. I can't get it. John Johnson, who's worth over $200 million and owns Ebony and Johnson Publishing Company, he can't get the cab either. And he can buy 10 cab companies. Once we get all of these separated illusions out of our mind about deltas, a.k.a. our enemy don't give a damn about any of it. Now, how does this relate to 1968? We came to 1968 with a lot of illusions. When Nkrumah came to power, 1957, and opened the African freedom independence explosion, we celebrated, but we didn't put the house in order so that the house could be protected. And Nkrumah was propagating concepts that would make the African take charge of Africa. And if the African took charge of the mental wealth of Africa, he would challenge the economy of the whole of the Western world. If the African mined the gold and marketed the gold, the platinum, the zinc, the manganese, the diamonds, If the African was in charge of that, he wouldn't be a beggar. They'd be begging him. The United Western world wasn't going to tolerate this. You doing all of this and saying that you played a role in history. Now that the African independence explosion is out, the Black Studies program concept is beginning. The civil rights movement is tapering off. The Black Power movement is prevalent, though tapering off. All of this concept of the possibility of African unity thrown into the harbor, and you think these people who cheated the whole world and built whole economic systems on robbing you going to stand aside and do nothing? Are you sane? Now the first thing they've got to do is to manipulate the media, manipulate the textbooks, try to prove to your mind that you are incapable of handling the mental wealth of your own continent that is yours by every law of God and man. Not only the whites in South Africa in cahoots with the West to do it, but the Arabs in North Africa in cahoots with them too. And because still the Black Americans and Africans in general cannot separate Arabism from Islam, they got to be kind to the Arab who's a womanizing dog and who is a bastard child of a bastard child and who is anti-African culture and who is a bastard child of a bastard child and who is anti-African culture as much as the Europeans. Now, because you participated in the creation of Islam, you don't have to go into the back door to ask a bunch of degenerates permission to practice a religion that you have to create in the first place. Take it away from them. Make it to what you want it to be. You don't have to imitate them and make it a cult and go to your own people with your nose in the air because you are Muslim. You're still black. You're still African. Ain't nothing going to change that. And you still can't get a cab. So now, what move can they make now that they feel threatened? The move is through the mass media. The move is through the teachers' union, then controlled and now controlled by a minority, a white minority, trying to impress themselves to the white majority by showing them that they can control us. They're almost successful. They grin and skin and give away favors, and they're successful in controlling key ones of us and giving us the illusion that they are teaching us. In my own community, after the Irish had created one of the sloppiest and most corrupt of all political machines called Tammany Hall, after for many times in New York they said Irish and dogs not allowed, once they got into politics, they got some monkeys off of their backs by manipulating. Now, They manipulated the school system, and they were the main teachers in the school system. When they came to our children, the Irish said, boldly and unashamedly, though you are inferior, professionally, I accept the challenge of teaching you. Even you with your inferior self can learn calculus and mathematics. And I will teach it to you. I will prove that I'm so good I can even teach you mathematics. And they did. They lost power, and another ethnic group came into begin to control the school system. This other ethnic group said that I love you. I will teach you how to adjust to your lowly lot. And they did. Never mind these aspirations about being doctors and lawyers. Inasmuch as you're going to mop the floors and might be a good carpenter, I'll teach you there's nothing wrong with that. And they did. I'd rather have the Irish back. The Irish did not teach you anything of consequence about your history because they didn't even know it. But they did teach you how to develop your mind so that you can find your own way to your own history. Now when we came to 1968 in the challenge at Montreal, whites were alerted to the fact that if you took over history, if you took over the right to interpret your role in history, you would take over everything else. So they bought themselves some Negroes, both from the Caribbean islands, who got on the extensive color kick, some from Africa, some from the United States. A group of blacks said, color doesn't matter, I belong to the human race. Race doesn't matter to me. It matters to that cab driver.
Bring it down there.
They had us in a bind now. We failed to use the most powerful instrument we could have used. The history, not only of what we have done, how we have survived, and the projection of our great possibilities as a people. We accepted a word called minority when we were never a minority. When a minority had programmed us into thinking we were a minority, they began now to give us little tidbits of nothing, a little bit of Booker T. Washington, a little bit of George Washington Carver, but no true chronological history. Certain professors were challenging all of this, creating good curricula. Other black professors were ignoring it. Now entered the scene of so-called black studies that should never have been called black studies in the first place. What we're talking about were the missing pages of world history. It was African history that should never use the word black studies. We have overused the word black. Black tells you how you look, but don't tell you who you are. The name of any people on the face of this earth, the proper ethnic name of a people must always relate to land, history, and culture. And when you address a people by their proper ethnic name, it must relate to historical geography, the historical geography of their origins. You dare not address an Italian by a German name. You address him by name. It tells where he began. Although he's been in America 5 generations, he has no problem with the word Italian. You've been here longer. You got a problem with the word African. You got the stamp of Africa on your face. You are separated because of it. You look in the Bible, you don't see nobody that looks African. So you haven't even questioned who wrote the book. You look in the textbook, you don't see nobody that looks like you. So now you look at the books about Africa, and you see Tarzan. Then, if you read a work called Africa, World's Richest Continent, by Leo Hansberry, it documents the fact that Africa is more endowed with mineral wealth than any other place on the face of the earth. Now, if this should have told you, instead of going to school and studying management, and not managing anything, not even yourself, you should have studied mineral wealth. You studied harbor management, airplane design, airport design, chemistry, oceanography. All the time, we were throwing our fists in the air, talking about black power. We had no power. We talking about nation time, and we were not even producing our underwear, not even producing the shoestring for our shoes. We should have kept our damn mouth shut, and quietly we could have opened a shoestring factory in a basement in Harlem, and we could have produced underwear in the extra room of any house that had an extra room. Let me put it in a crude way that you might understand me. A people who cannot make their drawers cannot rule a nation. That's the one thing you don't have any excuse for not making. Because nobody's looking at it. That's covered up. So if you do a bad job on it, you got time to practice until you get it straight. See, only your private beloved one supposed to see it, and she can say, "Dear, the seams are not too straight. I don't like the color. Maybe we'll do too much rub in the binder. Tell the fellas down at the factory they've got to improve, because I want you looking a little better." And you know when the ladies give the word is going to be carried out. And although you tell all the lies about not obeying them, you're going to get the word back to the factory. Tell the brothers, do a better job, because the ladies like to see me looking well, dressed and undressed. That's going to end that. So we're going to